in just the space of 12 months with just 1 year of financial accounts under its belt. It's now gone to private institutions and asked for a sale.
Codere SA has turned to Jeffries and Menmuir to assess sell options for the heritage Spanish gambling group. The board is reportedly seeking a €2 billion valuation for the business, pitching Codere as Spain's second largest gambling group and an established retail and online gateway into multiple South American markets for a buyer. Yet the proposed price tag has raised eyebrows given Codere's recent financial struggles, which have overshadowed the company since the 2010s. Further scrutiny surrounds the timing of the process. The sale of Codere is being explored at one of the most sensitive moments for capital markets, prompting questions over which PLCs or private buyers are in a position to fund the deal for the Spanish giant. Welcome to another episode of iGaming Daily, brought to you by Optimove, the creator of positionless marketing and #1 player engagement solution for iGaming and sports betting operators. I'm Fernando Noodt, media manager for SBC and your host for today, where I'm joined by the great Ted Menmuir, editor-at-large for SBC Media. Ted, how are you today?
Muy bien, Fernando. Good to be back in London after a very exciting trip to Prague, which I'll be reporting on next week.
Oh, all right. Yeah, we'll want to read all about it and hear all about it. But first, let's get on with this news. And of course, to discuss something that's so deeply related to the Spanish and Latin American markets, editor for SBC Noticias, Lucia Gando, is also with us today. Lu, how are you today?
Hello, guys. I'm happy to join this episode and talk about Codere, which is one of the biggest market leaders in Latin America in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, that maybe a while back people were not so familiar with the gambling companies, but over the last few years, especially with the online segment booming in Latin America, of course, the Codere brand has become way more popular than it already was, of course, because it was already big. It's just that people maybe didn't know they were playing at a Codere establishment before, but let's start right at the top. And do you, Pips, think this is an unexpected move by Codere to decide to sell its operations? And what is your immediate reaction to these developments, Ted?
I was going to say ladies first, Lucia, but okay, Fernando. Yes, I do view this as a surprise, especially given Codere's journey back to its kind of recapitalization, how it's handled its relationship with bondholders, and where the company is at the moment. Yes, it's come back from clearing its debts, but if you take a kind of long lens, you could really kind of build back and see that it's been a chaotic, 2020s for this business. It was once on the brink of bankruptcy. It's now through negotiations and through kind of a new capital structure back to being stable. However, it's also a surprise just given the general, as you stated in your introduction, the general criteria of global markets at the moment. There is a low confidence out there given the wider geopolitical space, and it also raises questions of who has €2 billion to fund this deal at this given time.
I know I don't. What about you, Lou? What are your first thoughts on this decision?
Well, I think it came out of nowhere, the news. We knew that Codere was struggling, but they were doing better in the past few years. They got to achieve certain financial goals, and the operations were well established. At least in Latin America, we also had good results with Codere Online. So we were a bit surprised, to be honest. But we'll see. It also makes sense, right, to let the company grow on its own and see what happens with this evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. I reckon this was a decision that was not taken lightly. They've probably been considering this for a long time, and it's just taking us by surprise because when they announce it, it's like first thing for us. But of course, the board has also reportedly set a 2 billion euro target for this sell. So, what is this valuation based on in terms of Codere's current position and assets?
Looking at the headline 2 billion target that they placed on Codere, to me, it seems like the spin here is clearly that whoever buys this company is securing the second largest gambling brand in Spain with a retail and online presence. And then I think the big picture here is that you get a feasible brand that has secured its space and has heritage carrying into the markets of Mexico, Uruguay, Argentina, and Colombia. However, I think you have to kind of again go back to this. What really stands out about the deal is that yes, it's what they're pitching, but it's also based on you have to be reflective of its track records. This is a company that was embedded or anchored to £2 billion debt to €2 billion debt over the past 10 years. It only just recently came out of its kind of capital renegotiation with bondholders, who reduced it by 95%. So the jury is very much out on what Codere has proven. It's a high number to pitch the market for. I believe that the reason why it's set so high is to primarily reward bondholders, so to ensure that they actually get something out of this M&A and the M&A closure. I don't think it's dressed very well, but the intentions are quite clear of who this deal is for.
No, we also have to take into account that they recently said that they may leave the Colombian market if things don't change tax wise. And also, we know that in Argentina, in the recent years, they had to close a lot of retail stores related mostly with bingos. So we know they are struggling in this continent, but as Ted said, they also have potential of growth if they do things right. So let's see.
Yeah, let's definitely have to wait and see where this goes. But of course, Ted, you were mentioning the severe financial distress that Coderre went through in 2023, 2024, and before that, even more. So, how has Coderre reshaped its business and its relationship with investors over the past 3 years? And is it now stable enough to pursue a sale like this?
Well, let's go back in 2023 and 2024. Essentially, Codere was running on bankruptcy, against the walls, against the ropes, however you want to put it. And it had to go through a period of significant renegotiation with its bondholders who had, capitalized this company, I think, tracking back to 2007, 2008, where Codere initially kind of began its South American expansion. It brought into a very, via debt, it acquired a lot of kind of premises in the markets of Argentina, Mexico, and Colombia. And where it has kind of struggled is essentially what you've seen in what Codere accounts tell you is that the one element that's increased is its online engagement by Codere Online. That was a unit that was separated. Its retail performance has been stagnant in Spain, and its South American gaming units have gone through a period of significant fluctuation given the market conditions and also in light of each kind of peso dropping against its euro value. That's impacted the way kind of the corporation has paid debt, its long-standing debt. It came to a point of inflection in 2024 where the bondholders agreed to reduce it by 95%. It's given Codere this clean slate to operate off. I think what is surprising to the market is that in just the space of 12 months, with just 1 year of financial accounts under its belt, it's now gone to private institutions and asked for a sale.
Yeah, and I want to go back to the price tag there, the 2 billion euros that they have set for the valuation of Codere. So is this a figure that is primarily about rewarding the Codere's long term bondholders, or can it be justified on the basis of the business valuation, the growth potential of Codere in all these markets that they are working on?
Oh, I think it's a mix. The bondholders became shareholders, so they want a return, but also the business is performing well, as Ted mentioned. Revenues in 2024 were 1.3 billion, and they have room to grow, especially in online betting. And now that the World Cup is coming, and they are very popular here in Latin America, so the price is ambitious, but um, it may be something that they can get.
And does Codere actually have a compelling equity story to sell to the market? Or is this more of a case of the shareholders trying to maximize value at the right moment?
Look, I think like in every deal, there is an equity story, and you have to tell something to market. And look, we've all bought and we've all sold something in our lives. And I think like Colette is saying, look, if you want an instant access point into South America and you want a trusted brand for Spanish markets, we're it. And we place that value at 2 billion. The more difficult side of this arrangement is just the timing and who's got confidence to do this sort of deal. There's going to be a lot of explaining to do for whichever buyer they get.
Yes, definitely this is something to be looking out for. But we will continue discussing who is gonna be buying Codere. Of course, we might or might not have the answer for that yet. But you'll have to stick around until after we do this very quick ad break, and we will be right back to covering this Codere sell story.
To meet additional operators, bigger and better than last year. There is such a buzz.
Be able to meet face to face.
A lot of good people I've met, new companies I hadn't seen before.
Far more exciting than your traditional conference for sure.
And we're back with more iGaming Daily to continue discussing this Codere sales story. 2 billion valuation it's seeking the Spanish giant for the business. And let's get into the deal dynamics. We were talking a lot about who is going to buy this. Of course, a $2 billion sale for such a polemical business feels ambitious in the current financial climate and we are in right now. So how realistic is it that Codere can sell this their business for $2 billion, €2 billion? Sorry, Lou.
Well, it's something for the prediction markets, right? Who's going to
Yeah,
buy
for sure.
Codere? Well, there's a lot of big operators in the world interested in Spain and Latin America. So realistic, maybe, but I don't think it will be easy. Except that we got surprised by one of these big operators that are currently leading the Latin American market. I'm thinking about Betson or Bet Warrior or Cirsa, even the biggest competitor in Spain. But we know that the gaming sector faces a lot of scrutiny, especially in these new markets. So we'll have to see who's able to face all these challenges, and of course have 2 billion euros
Yeah,
to make this achievable.
that to me is you're hitting the nail on the head. And I think you also got to separate the conditions out. Look, it's a bad market out there on a global perspective, but there's kind of individual nuances. Look at the exposure to Spanish kind of increasing retail prices that Codere has, and also, again, we're seeing kind of severe kind of fluctuations across, not only South American currencies, but every currency due to kind of an ongoing crisis and a crisis of confidence in the general market ahead of kind of, very visible global headwinds. There will be, these nuances that catch on to Latin America. And again, this is referring back to that kind of 2 billion price tag. Who's going to show their hand and say, look, we are confident that we can see this Codere deal through? It's up in the air.
And of course, we're talking global markets, we're talking Spain, we're talking Latin America. So what would exactly a buyer would be buying or acquiring when buying Codere? What is the true growth of or the true growth engine that drives Codere today?
This is where it gets interesting. So, yes, Codere in 2022, it spun out Codere Online, which was pretty much its only unit that was actually catching any growth. And its latest results for 2025, its accounts, it showed a net gaming revenues of 225 million euros, but its EBITDA is still, compared to European competitors or compared to other competitors, its EBITDA remains at 13 million euros. So it's a heavy price to put on just Codere Online to say, look, this is the growth engine of the deal. The other kind of factor to take on board here is how much exposure Codere has in terms of its retail channel and its land-based channel. Whoever buys this would have to kind of spin a lot of units. I don't necessarily think that the proposition there of putting in 2 billion to acquire Codere will necessarily be kind of cash focused. I think that there'll have to be kind of much more kind of stock compensations on the rewards, and there have to be a lot of kind of tiered a very high kind of tiered structure to how the deal is compensated.
And of course, I think that Codere Online has a lot of room for growth, but it has been kind of narrowing down its operations or its efforts over the last few years. We've talked with CEO Aviv Sher quite a few times over the last few months, and he has been very insistent in the fact that Codere Online is focusing on their core markets, in Spain, in Mexico, and where they are already working within Latin America, for example, Argentina, in the city of Buenos Aires. So I think there is room for growth for sure, and I do think that there's an opportunity when acquiring Codere through Codere Online, and of course the land-based business is also very big, but there is still a lot of work to do, and we'll have to see who wants to embark on such a venture and decide, okay, I'm gonna take Codere Online to the next level, or if they just want to take advantage of the business as it is, which I don't think any businessman or woman wants to do that. They always want more, right? So who do we see as those business people ready to invest and bid for a company like this? Lu, you already mentioned Betson, you already mentioned a few other companies. So which names could realistically enter the bullring in this M&A process?
Well, we know that Cirsa was also saved by Blackstone, so I think a big financial group like that could be one of the names that we'll see entering in this deal or at least negotiation. But we said like Betson, Flutter, maybe Entain, I don't know, like a huge merger, MIA, or maybe some financial groups investing all together in this business. I think it's more probable to find different financial groups investing all together than just one company buying the whole operation.
Yes, you're definitely gonna need someone with a very deep pocket and a very big wallet. Ted, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think that if you look at this from the top down, it screams that you would need some form of a private equity fund coming in. The other factor here is, I think, as we mentioned before, is that the ownership of Codere is divided by 4 kind of bondholders, and it stretches 85 investors. So it's very deep. There's lots of people that have to be satisfied for this deal to go through. I mean, looking at it from a kind of a European level, a company that's talked of taking or leading kind of global expansion is Lottomatica, but I don't think that they'll have a stomach to take a company which carries so many liabilities as Codere. I think it would look for a kind of more conservative buy to enter markets. And also, again, heading back, yes, Spain and South America there's opportunities there, but there's opportunities in a very fluctuating market. It's a risky bet to take on.
And being that risky, how confident are you that Coderre can secure this sale and, more importantly, achieve anything near or close to its target price?
Well, a wise man once said, hashtag wait and see. I think it's a coin toss. And I think actually the elements for this deal are not necessarily so much fixated on gambling. I think they're much more fixated on global market conditions. What is going to be the premium on available cash? Who can kind of leverage it and who can get access to it? Considering all these kind of global dynamics playing out, you have to be a very, very confident buyer to take on this kind of deal.
For sure. And would the sale of Codere prove transformative for its home market of Spain and for the wider gambling landscape in Latin America, Lou?
I think it will be a big deal. Codere is right now the major player in both Spain and Latin America. So I think we will be impacted by this change of operations. So we'll see, but it may be good for new stuff coming up here.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on in Latin America, especially tax-wise and regulation-wise. Governments deciding to regulate and going back and say, "Hey, I don't like this regulation," but what you're talking about, you signed it yourself, and all that stuff, all those shenanigans happen in Latin America. We'll have to hashtag wait and see what company is willing to take the risk, what company is willing to embark on a risky decision to acquire Codere, whether it's for 2 billion euros or less. We'll have to hashtag wait and see. And but that has been all for today. We will continue to monitor this news very closely because, of course, this decision to sell one of the biggest companies in Spain and Latin America is going to bring some more information ahead. So make sure you are subscribed to all SBC Media newsletters, especially SBC Noticias and SBC News, of course. And also follow iGaming Daily on social media and your preferred podcasting platform. That's been all for today. Thank you very much, Lucia Gando, Ted Menmuir. Thank you very much, Anaya McDonald, for producing this episode. I'm Fernando Noodt, and to our listeners out there, we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.